my friends. I hope you are enjoying the podcast as much as I am enjoying bringing you this content and spending some time with you, sharing some stories about moving from a paycheck into the purpose of what I was made for. So, welcome back, my friend. Welcome back. Glad to have you here. All right, so today's episode is going to be talking about the purpose isn't free, but neither is staying stuck. We're going to dive into that real deeply and kind of talk about it and go from there and just kind of process it together. If you haven't already, please make sure that you're following the podcast as well as leaving a rating so that way we can get this pushed out to people who are going through such a process, or if it connects with you, you can share this out with your friends and your family. So I greatly appreciate it. As I always say, I'm very grateful for you and very appreciative of you for pushing that play button and tuning in and listening to this journey. Really enjoying this. I'm really excited about this podcast. So this means a lot to me. So the podcast this episode is Purpose Isn't Free, but Neither is Staying Stuck. And I just want to start by saying this clearly. This episode is not meant to scare you. All right? It is meant to ground you. I'm very big on grounding ourselves. We just got back from a nice little walk outside, and I was able to sit outside and plant my feet in the grass and actually lay in the grass and sit in the grass and walk in the grass. And so I've just got a little bit of grounding for myself. Another strategy I love to do for grounding is I'll lay on my back on the floor and put my hands on my chest and just really appreciate the life that I have and everything that's coming with it. So, especially during this new transition that I'm doing. So, the reason I said that this is not meant to scare you, but it's meant to ground you, it's because of a lot of people talk about the cost of choosing your purpose. But the problem is that very few people talk about the honesty about this, about the cost of not choosing it, right? In the last episode, we talk about that we get really stuck and we remain stuck and we stay there. And so sometimes you have to take that courageous step. I took a leap of faith. And keeping to that faith. And let me tell you, friends, I'm going to be honest with you. It's not easy. It's not easy, but this is part of the growth. So today we're going to look at both, without the drama, without pressure, and without pretending either side is painless. We're going to really dive into this, and we're going to get really, really real about this whole thing. So somewhere along the way, many of us absorbed the idea that if something is aligned, it should feel effortless, right? If we are aligned, it should feel effortless. If it's purpose, doors should immediately fly open. Money should flow quickly. Fear should automatically disappear. But that belief sets a lot of people up for disappointment. And I kind of knew this going into this new transition, that in the last episode we talked about, how it's not going to come quick. And there's some times that you think that you're pushing it, right? You're putting the pressure on it, you're pushing it, and that it's going to come quick, and sometimes it's going to be delayed. And so what happens is, that belief will set you up for disappointment. Purpose doesn't remove any of the challenges. What it does is it reorders what the challenge is for. It reorganizes it. It sets it on a different path. So when the difficulty shows up, people will assume that something they either did or how they planned it went wrong, when in reality, something meaningful for them has started, right? It has started. So let's be honest about what purpose can cost, at least in the beginning. This is where I'm at right now. Let's talk about the cost of what purpose is bringing in the beginning. It's going to cost predictability. I will literally sit here at times in the best mood and the excitement. When I do these podcast episodes, I get so excited and knowing that I'm going to grow an audience, I'm going to attract clients, I'm going to attract the business into my coaching business and what I love to do, right? But the predictability is a challenge. It starts at the very beginning. Looking for that external validation. I've got to get myself known out there. That's a challenge. I got to get out there. I got to get people to know who I am, because people are not going to buy or sign up just for my service. They're going to sign up for me. They've got to connect with me. And I've got to connect with them, but I got to be real open and honest and be authentic with them and let them know that this is who the real person is. Immediate reassurance, right? That's a cost. The immediate reassurance. There's times I'm thinking going, holy moly, what am I doing? Is this the right thing? And I gotta ground myself. I gotta make myself aware. I gotta ask myself, am I aware? Because when I ask that question, it brings me back into the present moment, right? And then, of course, familiar structure. In the last 2 decades, had such a structure that now my structure is, I wouldn't say interrupted, it's just a different flow. It can ask you to sit with the uncertainty longer than you'd like. Let me tell you, there are times I'm sitting there and none of that is very comfortable. None of that is comfortable at all. So when people say purpose isn't free, they're not wrong. But it's only half of the story, friend. It's only half of the story. So here's the part that gets skipped most often. Staying stuck is also going to cost you. It's going to cost you your energy. It's going to cost you your creativity. It's going to cost you your presence. It's going to cost you your health. And it's going to cost you your self-trust. And sometimes it can be a physical on the health part, but sometimes it could be more mental on the health part. But whatever it is, it's going to cost you small pieces of yourself over time. And some people are going to stick with it. Some people are going to stay stuck, and that's okay. That's what they want. That's what they're willing to do. But I always say, if you're going to complain about being stuck, I don't want to hear it. Because you can make the shift. But what is the hardest part? That cost is gradual. So it's easy to normalize. In this process, we are starting to create a new normalcy, I would say. So it's normalizing it. What's going to happen is you're not going to feel it all at once. You're going to feel a little bit of fatigued because you really have to get working at it. You might feel like you're exhausting yourself a bit. Sometimes there's going to be that numbness. It's going to hit you like you're walking into a wall and you're just going to get numb in the whole process. And in the quiet sense, you're going to feel that you're shrinking. Right? You're going to feel that you're shrinking. Comfort is often framed as the safe option. We love, as humans and human behavior, we love to stay in our comfort zone. But I'm going to tell you that comfort requires maintenance. The comfort that you want to stay in requires maintenance. It requires the suppression of the truth. It requires rationalization. It'll require you to have this emotional buffering. And sometimes it'll require you to stay so busy that you will not feel anything. And this type of comfort doesn't come without effort. What it does is it disguises the effort as a responsibility. Let that sink in for a bit. The comfort without effort will disguise the effort as a responsibility. And over time, that effort becomes heavier than the risk. This is the real decision point. Not, is purpose expensive, but which cost am I willing to live with? Am I willing to live with the cost of uncertainty? Am I willing to live with the cost of self-abandonment? Am I willing to live with the cost of rebuilding? Or am I willing to live with the cost of staying misaligned? Friend, there is no cost-free path. Okay? There is no cost-free path. There is only a conscious one. The conscious path. So most people don't stay stuck because they don't know what they want. They stay stuck because the cost of leaving feels immediate. And it did. For me, it did. December 19th, the cost of leaving felt immediate. And then the cost of staying feels distant. If I was there, I was on the fence and I was like, well, I could change my mind. But then I was like, but I'm going to be distant from what I really want to do. So what happens is the nervous system starts to prioritize, I can never say that word correctly. It starts to put things into priority mode and fills what's immediate. That doesn't make sense, doesn't make you weak. What that does, as my coach would say, it makes you human. It makes you human. This is when you start to really discover who you are. But awareness changes all of that equation. Right? Awareness starts to change all of that equation. If you're listening to this and you feel torn, you've thought about this maybe down the road, or you're currently in a position where you feel stuck, part of you, and let's be honest, part of you wants growth. But then the other part of you wants to stay safety. Part of you wants that safety. I want you to know that you don't have to rush into this. Let me tell you, this has been something I've been thinking about for the last, I would probably say, 2 decades. I would say less than that, maybe a decade. Let's go a decade. I've started to feel this back a decade ago. And I would be off and on, and then something in September of 2025 clicked on me. I hired a coach, and all of a sudden, things started to change for me. But I was still uncertain about the safety of all of this, right? The security of it all. But you don't have to rush. You don't have to justify yourself. And you really don't have to prove your readiness. But what you do deserve is the honesty with yourself. Staying stuck is a neutral point. But it's also a choice with consequences, even if they're quiet ones. Purpose isn't a transaction. Okay? Purpose isn't a transaction. Purpose is an investment. And when you make the investment, you're making the investment in integrity, alignment, self-trust, sustainability. That's what you're investing in. And like any real investment, the returns are not going to be instant. They're going to start to compound. And not just financially, but emotionally, energetically, and relationally. So instead of asking, can I afford to choose this purpose? Shift your question to, can I afford to keep postponing myself? That was a question I had asked myself. I had to start asking myself, can I afford to keep postponing myself? In September, I made the decision. December, I signed the contract for that decision. And that question doesn't demand action, it just invites clarity. And clarity is what actually moves things forward. It moves things forward. Let's sit with that for a bit and let's really think about that. How much longer are you going to stand to keep postponing yourself into that desire that you really want? All right. Coming up in the next episode, we're going to talk about rebuilding income without abandoning yourself. We're going to look at how to approach money in a way that supports the alignment instead of undermining it. If today's episode really did resonate with you, make sure you are following this podcast. And also, stay with me in this journey, friend. Stay with me in this journey. All right, something to remember. Purpose has a cost, but also staying stuck has a cost. What I want you to do is I want you to choose consciously. Choose consciously, my friend. All right, see you on the next one. Talk to you soon.